Did you know that you scream in your sleep? Barbara put her hand on my chest, and her legs seductively wrapped around my torso. She was the first woman I dated after my bitter divorce from a cheating bitch named Anne, and the first woman I spoke to after my first trip to the Middle East as a contractor after I left my job as an army medic. It's not very loud, but it's a little scary at first. Sorry, I said, picking up the glass of water I kept on the nightstand. I know very little about you, she continued, as if you are deliberately hiding a lot about yourself that you don't want to tell people. You know I'm nearby and you can talk to me. I know, I leaned down and kissed her softly. It's a long story. Maybe someday I'll tell you. Uo, she giggled and climbed on top of me. Her laugh sometimes unsettled me, it reminded me so much of Anne. Are we already making plans for the future? She clutched the blanket tightly to her body, as if wrapping herself in a shroud. There was something unusually sexy in this manner of hers. When we met, I wasn't looking for a relationship, I wasn't looking for anything at all. It was a chance meeting in the most unexpected place, group therapy. After my arrival with a contract company, I was assigned to the VIP escort team, and, thanks to my medical experience, I quickly gained the trust of clients. We usually accompanied dignitaries, congressmen, senators, high officials, and officers in general, all important persons who, for some reason, wanted to visit the front line and then return home. Sometimes this was needed to recruit votes, sometimes for the sake of entertaining the troops. I admit that it was precisely these moral visits that were my favorite. But I became a little reckless, in fact. I stopped caring about myself and my own survival altogether. In every firefight, I rushed forward, took the most dangerous positions, and got a strange pleasure from it. In the first 6 months, I was shot 3 times, not too seriously, mostly tangentially, but these incidents ended up in my employer's reports. They also noticed how many opponents I destroyed, but at the same time, my successes and my technical knowledge, together with medical experience, allowed me to successfully complete the first contract. When it came time to renew my contract, the employer made it clear that I needed to take 3 months off and see a psychiatrist. Not just for a consultation, they insisted that it was a forensic psychologist who could give me a conclusion on my fitness for service. I saw Dr. Cargill, and he immediately ran a battery of tests to try to figure out the root cause of my problems. Apparently, it wasn't enough for him that I went through military training and had a lousy childhood. He eventually diagnosed me with emotional withdrawal, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and several forms of stress disorders. He believed that I coped with these problems with the help of alcohol, that my irritation served as a kind of shell that prevented me from getting close to people, and my sarcasm was a well-honed weapon to keep them at a distance. I suppose it's all nonsense, and he's just taking up time that I could spend drinking, but the boss insisted, and in order to keep my job, I decided not to argue. The doctor told me to go to group classes in his office. They helped people cope with PTSD, and talking with others could provide effective tips and techniques that had already been tested in the experiences of the participants. When I first walked into the office, I saw her Barbara. I still remember her first words, even now when I remember that moment years later. You look lost, and perhaps a little tipsy. A gathering of people with addictions is on the other street, honey. Wow, I replied. Is this an evening of humor here today? Damn, I didn't prepare the number. Never mind, she laughed. You're at the right place. You must be the newbie Dr. Cargill was talking about. I'm Barbara, the group leader. Just don't call me Barb. She extended her hand and I shook it. What about Babs? What about a kick? Nice to meet you, Barbara. How long do these classes last? It depends on how much people want to share, but usually an hour is the minimum. What, do you have an important date somewhere? I hoped it would, I replied. It wasn't my style at all, but after so many years of living in a familiar role, I had nothing to lose. If I didn't want to continue to lose and get hit, I needed to stop being the same and become different. Oh, what a cunning one you are, she grinned. But first, let's get through this meeting and then see if I'm in the mood for a cup of coffee. The session went as well as possible. I learned a lot and met people who had similar experiences. Some were veterans, others were divorced, others were survivors of childhood abuse. On all 3 points, I had a complete set. Whenever we got off topic, Barbara would accurately ask a question and choose someone from the group who could answer in a way that would bring us back to the right topic. Watching her do this was almost magical. After 2 hours, she ended the class and made sure everyone knew about their upcoming appointments with their doctors at the practice. Why do I seem to be the only one who goes to Cargill? Is he new here or what? I asked her when the last participants left the room. There was still coffee on the table. I poured myself a mug and offered it to her, and she did not refuse. No, he's not new, she said, chuckling quietly. He's the clinical director of this practice, and you are his only patient at the moment, she continued. What did I do to deserve such an honor? Well, your employer contacted him personally, that's all I know. We need to find out the rest from him. We chatted some more, and I learned a lot about her that evening. So, I said, finishing my second cup of coffee, are we going for coffee? What do you mean? She giggled. It was my first time hearing that chuckle, and it immediately hooked me. A chill ran down my spine. My eyes narrowed in a mixture of disgust and anger, all because of the way her laugh reminded me of Anne. Honey, we were just drinking coffee. It's time for me to go home. But you're a nice guy. I'd like to get to know you better. She touched my face with her palm, repeating the tender gesture that I had been feverishly trying to forget since Anne. But honey, I'm not easy. Well, yes I am, I chuckled, and she laughed even more. She took my phone, dialed her number, and pressed call, and her phone vibrated. I'll call you. She leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. And don't forget about tomorrow's reception. I heard good things about yesterday's meeting, Cargill began. Would you like to tell me about her? What can I say? I was surprised by how many people I could sympathize with. It was interesting to learn how they learn to cope with their problems. What do you think of their advice? Do you think this is something that will suit you too? I'm not sure, I admitted. If I complete the full course and deal with the problems that, as it seems to me, have saved me so far, then when I return back, I will find myself naked. Seeing his bewilderment, I explained, all these people are completely civilians, they have ordinary jobs, they return home every night. And this is wonderful, they served and returned to peaceful life. They can allow themselves to forget everything they have been through. They don't have to remember the lessons we must learn to stay alive. I can't afford it, at least for now. So you think that your current job does not give you the opportunity to heal, find peace of mind? I think I'm alive only because of luck and skill. If I get rid of my skills to heal, I'll be left with nothing but luck. But it seems to me that I don't have enough of it left. Then perhaps you yourself understand what you need to do, he remarked. But, in my opinion, you should continue to go to group classes. Besides, Barbara thinks it's most beneficial for you. By the way, I continued, why am I your only patient? It's a favor for friendship, he replied. Your employer is a good friend of mine, and for some reason he likes you. This, one might say, is a miracle. In all the time that I have known him, you can count the number of people he tolerates on the fingers of one hand. I admit honestly, in addition to your friendly request, you are interesting to me from a professional point of view. Judging by what you said about your past childhood, upbringing, failed marriage, career, any other patient with half your problems would already be trying to die. But not you. It feels like it never even occurred to you. Honestly, a patient with your level of injury is usually in much worse shape or has at least tried. I have patients who don't have half of your stories, but they have a whole bunch of addictions and abuses, and you have some kind of superhuman durability. Don't get me wrong, you're still injured, but you're not going as deep as many. I want to understand how you do this, what drives you, what keeps you going. I'm stubborn, I replied. It was true, I really was stubborn. But the sessions continued, and I made noticeable progress. Individual meetings gave results, group classes taught me a lot. I started spending a lot of time with Barbara. After groups we had dinner together, met for lunch. A couple of months after our meetings began, she came to my home for the first time, explaining that she wanted to see me outside of our regular sessions. Out of her simple and innocent habit, she came with a movie, and meanwhile I started a light dinner of salmon and roasted vegetables. "I love a man who can cook," she said, sipping wine and looking over my shoulder at the fish. "Well," I replied, "if I don't cook it myself, I won't eat it. I don't particularly like fast food, and going to restaurants every day is a little expensive. It's still rare, usually men don't do that." Seeing my expression, she stopped short. "Is something wrong? Did I say something?" "I think this is the first time you've said we're dating," I remarked with a smile, reaching over to the spice rack to add the finishing touches to the dish. "It's nice to hear it out loud." She really enjoyed the dinner, appreciating the flavor of the brown sugar mixed with the red pepper flakes and mint leaves on the fish, and the garlicky flavor of the vegetables. The white wine was flowing freely, and by the time we opened the second bottle, we were settled down on my couch watching a movie. "This is the best date of my life," she said, stuttering slightly. "But if you and I are going to date, you need to understand what I want and what I hope to turn it into. I know guys don't always like to hear things like that, but it's very important to me." "Barbara," I answered, noticing the sadness in her eyes, "we met in the most unusual place and under the most unusual circumstances. You have already heard all my stories and problems that I tell during sessions. I doubt you can say anything that will scare me off after everything that is known about me." "That's what I'm afraid of," she whispered, putting the glass on the coffee table and in one movement settling herself on top of me. "I don't know why I'm so drawn to you." She leaned in, and our lips touched for a brief moment, "because you're all wrong." The second kiss turned out to be more passionate, more greedy, as if we wanted to steal each other's air. "It shouldn't be this way," she continued, each kiss interrupting her words. "It's just unfair." I pulled her away when I felt the salty taste of her tears on my lips. "What are you talking about?" Probably something appeared on my face, some emotion that I myself did not notice, but it was suddenly reflected in her eyes. And then she hugged me, pressed my head to her chest so tightly as if she was afraid to let go. "You are a good person," she said, crying silently, now more openly. "All your stories that you tell people listen to you, and their hearts break. They are all worried about you, but you don't even realize it. You don't seem to allow yourself to guess." She kissed me again, softly, a little longer than necessary. "Nice guys like you don't have to put up with so much at once." "It happens," I said, my heart beating slower and my breathing becoming more even. I didn't like this kind of talk, and although I didn't expect more from the evening than just a quiet dinner, the mood in the room changed to one of oppressive melancholy. "No," she protested, as if she had caught my train of thought, and stood up, picking up the glass of wine again. "It shouldn't be like that. It's not fair that a good person like you goes through so much pain." She finished the wine in one fell swoop and looked at me over the edge of the glass. Without saying a word, she reached out and pulled me towards her. "You have anger building up inside you, Dee. Please, at least for this night, please take it out on me." I took her to the bedroom. Knowing that I would only stay in the States for a couple of weeks, I did not furnish my home. I had a minimum of things. I was still not sleeping well in regular beds, and the only thing I splurged on was a quality mattress made of dense memory foam. When you lie on it, it seems hard, almost like a board, but as soon as the material warms up from body heat, you begin to slowly sink into it, as if into a cocoon. I understood what Barbara wanted. She literally gave me permission to vent my anger using her body. But still, I decided that our first time should be a little tender. I had nothing on the walls except my family's coat of arms, which I carefully hung in the most visible place in the bedroom. Of course, Barbara didn't notice anything in this dim room. We were too busy. After plunging into a deep sleep, but through the slumber I noticed that she smiled when she heard my quiet whisper, "And now you are mine." I pulled the blanket over her and went into the kitchen to clear the table and have a quiet drink. I struggled with a feeling of guilt for treating her this way, even though she herself asked for it. But I felt something else even more strongly, something I hadn't experienced for many years, a feeling of joy. About half an hour later, when I had finished cleaning and drinking, I returned to the bedroom. Barbara was lying where I had left her. If it weren't for the occasional soft snoring, one would think she was lifeless. I carefully settled down next to her, and immediately, as if she felt it, she put her head on my shoulder, pressed her hand to my chest, and threw her leg over me. "Do you want to talk about it?" She looked happy. This was evident from the smile that never left her face. Although we only spent one night together, she already wanted to find out why it was so hard for me to sleep at night. "Honestly, no," I replied, refilling my coffee. "These are just nightmares, you know. I have never served in the army. I have never seen wars or death, except in the movies. I've heard a lot of stories, and sometimes I feel terrible afterwards, but it's not the same as seeing everything with my own eyes." She looked down at the plate, fidgeting with her fork in the scrambled eggs, and I understood. She wanted to ask something important, but was looking for the right wording so as not to cause a negative reaction from me. "What's happened?" I had already finished breakfast, and now I was just enjoying her presence, holding a mug of coffee in my hands. "You can ask anything, just don't be offended by my answers." "Well," she faltered, "last night I was sure you tore my shirt when you opened it. And in the morning I looked, all the buttons were in place. Did I just imagine this, or did you slowly sew them back at night?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Is that what you wanted to ask?" "Yes," she answered shyly. "This is one of many questions, but it is the simplest." "No, you didn't imagine it. I really ripped your shirt off, but I have a lot of experience. When you rip clothes to help with a wound, you know how to pull so that the buttons just come out of the loops. And yes, I did unclasp my bra with one hand. More precisely, two fingers and a quick turn of the hand. It's the same with jeans." "I see, so you've had a lot of practice," she said, a hint of jealousy creeping into her voice. "What else did you want to ask?" I changed the topic. "Why do you have your family's coat of arms on the wall?" she continued. "It's an important part of me. You know something about my past. From childhood, I was taught that a man has only two treasures, his good name and his word. If you tarnish the name, you tarnish the word. If you tarnish the word, you tarnish the name of the whole family. Honor was very important." I bit my tongue so as not to say too much. "I see it in you," she replied seriously. "You are a very honest and noble person." Well, all the questions, I chose not to react to her praise. In fact, I felt that I had sullied the family name for a long time and was only trying to clean myself off. "That's enough for now. I'm afraid to ask you anything else." She looked at her watch. "It's late, I'll run. Thank you for a great time. We definitely need to do it again, and soon. Really, don't forget about your meeting with Dr. Cargill today." "It's good that you remember." I smiled. "Will I see you in the evening?" "Not today," she said. "I have something to do, and I need to get away from it all. I already feel like everything hurts, and if I start remembering again—" She smiled playfully, shivering. "Okay," I nodded, although some parts of the phrase made me feel a vague anxiety that I could not fully understand at the time. But the subconscious noted this, and soon everything became clear. I walked her to the door and kissed her tenderly. Then he kissed her harder. "I hope to see you this week." "Behave, maybe you'll see." "Well," Dr. Cargill began after another session, where I honestly spoke about the previous evening, but tried not to mention Barbara by name. I didn't want her position as the leader of the group to suffer from this. "I'm glad that you met a woman who makes you smile. But last time we touched on a topic that we should return to." "You mean, am I going to renew my contract?" I looked closely at the doctor. "Honestly, I don't know." "Well," he said, "as long as your job forces you to be in a place where there is risk and stress all the time, you will not be able to completely overcome your demons. You need a solution that will make your return to a normal life safe in your eyes." "Do you think I've worked on myself enough to return to the company? Do I believe that you are the same person who came into my office 3 months ago?" No, I definitely don't think so. Cargill took off his glasses and looked at me. You have made incredible progress. All these sessions, both with me and in the group, have greatly helped you learn mechanisms and techniques for coping with stress that will ultimately help you heal completely. My recommendation is to allow you to renew your contract and return to your normal duties. But I strongly recommend that you take advantage of the remaining time and understand whether this money is worth inflicting even more psychological damage on yourself. I unexpectedly began to talk to him more openly than ever before. I have a good reason to think about finding a job here. Perhaps because of one girl. It seems to me that there is something in this. I'm happy for you, he began, but I don't think it's right to make such decisions based on a relationship that has just begun. It's too much of a burden, but if you decide to stay, I'm sure Barbara will be glad to hear it. For a moment, it seemed to me that he guessed who this new girl in my life was. She cares about you very much and wants you to get better. We all want it. I had 2 weeks left before I had to make a final decision on the contract. The sessions, both with the group and with the doctor, were beneficial to me, and the time spent with Barbara was simply wonderful. Although it was not possible to meet as often as we would have liked, our meetings were always eventful and brought a lot of impressions. On Cargill's advice, I didn't tell anyone what decision I was going to make. But by the time the last days of my exile were coming to an end, Barbara suddenly began to behave somehow differently. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. Our bodies were still covered with a layer of sweat after the next session, but our breathing had already been restored. Although Barbara appeared to be a strong woman in her profession, she was surprisingly submissive in bed. She gave herself completely to me, following my every silent instruction as if it were a law. We had an unspoken agreement even after that very first night. "Your time here is almost running out." There was sadness in her words. "And when you leave, I don't know if you will come back." "Do you think I won't come back?" "Maybe you'll come back alive, yes," she answered. "But I'm afraid you won't be the same person. The next time you enter this abyss, you will go even deeper, and even I will not be able to pull you out." Then I began, finally ready to reveal my decision. "What do you want? What do you want me to do?" "Nothing," she said, looking into my eyes, and then continued, "I need you to leave." What? There are few things in life that can truly surprise and unsettle me, but being wrong in this situation was definitely at the top of that short list. "Listen," she said, "there are a lot of things about you that I don't know. Many of them I'm afraid to find out." She bit her lip for a second, again formulating the thought. "I had a lot of fun with you. I'm glad we spent this time together. But I see the way you look at me. You want more from me than I can give." She took my face in her hands, that damned gesture that was reminiscent of what Anne did. "What do you think I want that you can't give?" I noticed she pulled away a little before answering. Throwing off the blanket, she began to collect her things. "You want a real relationship, you want to get married, you want a future. But I can't give it to you." She was already getting dressed. "I can't marry you." "Why?" "Because," she looked at me with those same eyes that I had seen more than once, but this time something new was read in them. "I'm already married." "What the hell do you mean you're married?" "Sorry." She was already leaving the apartment. "Damn, I wish I had met you years ago. I haven't lived with him for a long time, but he's still my husband. Please forgive me." "Get all your things and get the hell out," I said in an icy voice, "immediately." "Okay." She had already opened the door, but turned around for a moment. "You are a good person, but with this lifestyle, I'm afraid you may not live to see 30. Please remember this. You will still meet a wonderful girl who will be worthy of you." I said, "Get out of here." Thank God she left before I cried. I just did to another guy what my ex-wife did to me, helped destroy someone's marriage. I vomited inside out from disgust and pain. I vomited into the trash can. I turned a man into a cuckold, and my ignorance was no excuse. I should have asked more questions and demanded answers. Part of me wanted to find her husband, go to him, and let him take revenge on me in any way that would be the human right thing to do. But I knew that if I saw Barbara again, I would not be able to restrain myself and would do her terrible harm. I had already decided to quit and stay for her sake, to give our relationship a chance. The world around me darkened. I plunged into a black void. And when I woke up, the same chaos was happening in my head. Once again, I made a big decision because of a woman, and once again it ended in disaster. I picked up the phone and dialed the only person I needed to talk to before calling my employer. Dr. Cargill, I spoke as soon as I heard the phone go off. I wanted to inform you that I decided to extend the contract. Also, I need to cancel all remaining sessions. I am very grateful to you for everything you have done for me. I'm glad you made up your mind, but are you sure you want to cancel the remaining appointments? You have advanced so much, and I am afraid that you are operating in a state of crisis. Some fuss was heard in the background. Sorry, doctor, it looks like I'm at the wrong time. I just wanted to personally let you know that I will no longer be able to attend the sessions. No, everything's fine, Cargill continued. It's just that my wife, from whom we are separated, suddenly appeared at my house. It seems she had a fight with her girlfriend and came rushing to me. Now I will try to calm her down and give her your number. Excuse me, who? Barbara, he added, is my wife. I'm sure she'll want to talk to you before you leave. Like I said before, she cares about you very much, so tell her in person that you won't be attending the group sessions. I hung up and grabbed the trash can even harder. The last thing I remember is that I cursed her with all possible words and swore to take revenge on her. My last days in this city were spent in trouble. I hired a transport company, broke the apartment lease, and signed a new contract with the company. We spoke with the doctor one more time. He tried to convince me to see Barbara, but I simply stated that I needed to prepare for an upcoming business trip. On the way to the airport, I saw Barbara walking next to Cargill. He waved to me, and I just silently looked in their direction. If I had heard his words, I would have known that he said, "Everything that has happened to him in the last few days has undone our many months of work." He was ready to leave his old life behind, settle down here, and really work on his inner healing. Now I'm not sure that I helped him in any way. I'm afraid he will never be able to trust anyone again. What a shame. And the only answer to these words would be the howl of the woman next to him, who immediately collapsed to the ground. 10 months have passed since the day I learned that I had become an involuntary cuckold. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but please understand. For me, a strict moral code is above all. I very clearly distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. I do not recognize any gray zone. When Anne told me she was pregnant, I knew our marriage was over. The fact that she was pregnant by someone else I wouldn't call a man made it clear that our future together was an illusion. When Barbara admitted that she had a husband, the sickening feeling and disgusting taste of my own bitter self-respect on my lips drove me crazy. I could not see her without wanting to harm her. "You are a very angry person," Rebecca told me. She was also a contract soldier and previously worked as a doctor. She was hired to help local women in the villages we visited. Islamic culture has many rules that make it difficult for women to receive medical care. They cannot speak to men without the presence of their husband, father, or brother. This greatly limits the information they are willing to share. "I've been sitting in silent for the last 30 minutes, I answered. "We went to Baghdad to replenish supplies of medicines and buy everything that our colleagues from headquarters asked for. Our own supply was meager, and roadside attacks had become more frequent due to the diminishing presence of American troops in the region. But I can just hear your evil thoughts," she laughed. She smoked even more than me, and her voice became noticeably rougher, but there was something pleasant in her laughter. "If you don't want this position, I'll take it myself." "No, that's not the point," I lied. "Throughout my career, I was a foot soldier, an ordinary cog. When the boss offered me a supervisor position, it would mean a higher salary, but also less time spent in the field, which is what I liked. If I agree, I won't be able to hear your melodic voice more often." "Your effing eyes are deep," she laughed. "But seriously, we all think you deserve a promotion. You have the most hours on missions, For us, you are the first guy in the village. We are all behind you, like behind a stone wall, and the guys already see you as a leader. This is obvious to everyone except yourself. But if I become your boss, I answered sarcastically, how can I then blow your brains out in bed? Maybe I'll earn a promotion this way, she laughed again. In fact, Rebecca is a 100% gay girl. She repeatedly told me stories about her ex-girlfriends. I wish I could say it was exciting, but after Barbara, I was too empty to appreciate such stories. However, laughing with her sometimes helped me feel human again, even if only for short moments. You're killing me, temptress, I exclaimed, pressing my hand to my chest as if I had a broken heart. Oh, how hard it is for me. You don't look like a drama queen at all, Dee, she answered with a laugh. Seriously, how are you? I live one day at a time, Rab, only I was allowed to call her anything other than Rebecca. Imagine that girl from your fantasies, the most desirable, ideal. Lips, hair, eyes, breasts, ass. Rebecca has all this multiplied by 100. Because of her appearance and name, many guys tried to call her Becky until they received a crushing look and an equally crushing blow from her. I still didn't understand what I did to deserve an exception to this rule, but nevertheless I was glad of her friendship and care. You know, she was right about one thing, Rebecca said. No one but her knew all the details of what happened. I agonized for a long time about whether to tell Dr. Cargill about my affair with Barbara, and in the end I decided to spare him so that he would not find out that his wife was no better than my ex. What exactly? You will meet the 1D. Even as broken and crazy as you will still find yours. I think I've already found it, I answered. It turned out that she loves women. Rebecca playfully hit me on the arm. I wasn't talking about you, I meant someone hot. This time she hit harder and more accurately. God, because of men like you, I changed my orientation, she added with obvious irony. My soul, I answered. There are no more people like me left in the world. I knew her story and understood what she meant. This was something she mentioned during our first combat encounter. We were called to evacuate several civilians who were being attacked by a mob for allegedly burning the Quran. We tried to take control of the situation, shouting at the crowd to get people to disperse and taking away the victims. Someone threw a Molotov cocktail, and we were forced to hide in the nearest building, from where we returned fire until the crowd began to disperse. Rab, call for reinforcements, I yelled. The rest fire, watch the roofs. Any movement there shoot immediately. I looked at Rebecca. Rabbi, where are the reinforcements? 10 minutes, she answered. Damn, I'm afraid we won't last that long. Shut up and continue. I continued. Choose your targets. Guys, don't waste your ammo. I looked at the two fighters nearby. You two, find an exit to the roof and shoot from above. Alive. D, Rebecca called out to me. What are you up to? I think they'll try to flank us and take us from the top flank, I said, choosing a new target. But the one I was aiming at managed to hide behind the wall and was out of reach. Breathe deeply, Rab. We'll go back home and eat your tuna tacos there, okay? You're a goat, she grinned, gradually coming to her senses. But he's a good goat. The guys are talking on the radio. She put her hand to her ear, trying to make out the message. Aircraft will be coming soon. We're firing at the target dangerously close, I said into the radio. Open fire. Aim at the building at the end of the street. Take cover after the volley. I grabbed Rebecca and pulled her towards me. If we're going to die, then I want to go with a nice pair of breasts. In fact, I pressed her against a stronger wall, so that if the building collapsed, we would not be completely overwhelmed, and if we were, it would be easier to get out together. And I don't argue, she answered, clasping me with her arms. She herself would like to die. The sound of explosions thundered, and the walls of our shelter shook. There was a nasty ringing in my ears. Everything around was plunged into darkness under the weight of the collapsed walls. I felt that Rebecca was moving in my arms, but I could not see or hear her. We were squeezed. I don't know exactly when I lost consciousness and for how long. When I woke up, I heard Rebecca telling me the story of her life. Honey, I woke up, I squeezed out. She visibly sighed with relief and hugged me even tighter. I'm fine. How long have we been here? The guys say there's very little left, probably a couple more minutes. I felt you go limp, and I thought, it will take more than a building falling on me to kill me, I replied, squeezing her tighter. Thank you for your concern. You are the kindest person I have ever met, she said through sobs. I thought you died. This is so similar to my fate to finally find a nice guy who treats me like a person, next to whom I can be myself and not be afraid that he will take advantage of me, and then lose him. For a second, I completely broke down. I told you, even the building won't take me, I repeated, feeling a strange déjà vu. It's too early for Satan to send me to the kingdom. Oh, and you're so self-confident, she laughed, wiping away her tears. You know, if I had met you a couple of years earlier. Oh, sorry. She remembered Barbara telling me almost the same thing. Of all the people I was close to, only Rebecca really understood what was happening to me. I've known for a long time that something was wrong with me, ever since that story when my brother set up one very unpleasant situation. This incident had a strong impact on me and did not allow me to get close to people normally. As Dr. Cargill later said, since I could not fully connect with a person on an emotional level, I learned to fake this intimacy. Not in a bad way. Instead of the natural feeling of chemistry, I collected as much information as possible about the person who interested me, and the brain, to compensate for the lack of emotions, built its own connections distorted but very strong. Therefore, I often associate people with certain gestures, things, or words. It's okay, I answered, but I want to hear what you wanted to say. I liked the beginning. It's just, perhaps this proximity to death that we are experiencing together is taking its toll. But if I had met you 10 years ago, it is possible that I would not have changed my orientation. I felt excitement awakening in me, and she couldn't help but notice how tensely I twitched at the same time. Her movements only intensified the effect. Hey, when did you start carrying short-barreled weapons? This instance, since birth, I chuckled, grinning sheepishly. But sorry, you're not helping at all by moving like that. Oh my God, she laughed. Is a near-death experience capable of arousing even a cold killer? Maybe I shouldn't tell you everything until the end. Fuck you, teaser, I responded. Come on, come to an agreement. Listen, she interrupted me. I love my wife. And I know that she loves me. Not once in all the time have I doubted her loyalty, although we spent a long time apart. But when I started telling her about you, she, frankly, began to suspect that you and I slept together. We fought so often because of this, sometimes we didn't communicate for days. Do you remember the day we were attacked? I remembered it perfectly. We accompanied a local celebrity and humanitarian to one of the meetings. For the rebels, this was a tasty target, the kidnapping or murder of a media figure. Since this was not a diplomatic, but a civilian person, her security was entrusted to private military companies. I was in the last car in a convoy of 4 cars. Rebecca was in the first, along with our star. The second and third vehicles acted as decoys. The first vehicle was hit by and wide, but thanks to the additional armor, it was not seriously damaged. We quickly got our bearings and started checking to see if there were any wounded, when suddenly the second wave of attackers hit the column. The rebels began shooting with light weapons and tried to pull the passengers out of the cars. At that very second, I realized that Rebecca was already being dragged somewhere into the city. If they had reached the alleys, we would not have seen her again. Even now I shudder, imagining what would have happened if these Inhumans had dragged her to the shelter. Without thinking twice, he did everything possible to save her. She lost consciousness, tears were streaming down her face, she was greatly affected by the explosion. She was taken to the hospital, where she spent 3 weeks before doctors released her back. I remember, I confirmed, squeezing her in my arms. This memory was not easy for me. So, that night when we returned, you called my wife, she continued. She told me that when she saw the overseas code, she didn't want to answer the phone, but you called again and again. She only answered the third call, I interjected. and I wasn't happy when I realized who was calling. When she heard your voice, Rebecca continued, she was sure that you were calling to say that we slept with you. Why are you taking me away from her? She hated you for a long time. Even without knowing you, she couldn't stand you, she just made it up to herself. And when you explained what happened and how much danger I was in, she said it broke her heart. What did you tell her then? Do you remember? It seems that I asked her for forgiveness for almost depriving her of her loved one, I retold, which I am very sorry for, because I almost deprived her of her dearest one. Didn't she tell you that before your call, she was so sure of your sin that she was going to go with her friends to have fun and, in fact, just sleep with someone to spite me? But after your words, it completely crushed her, made her feel like the last bitch, and besides, she realized how wrong she was about you. Rebecca stirred again in my arms. You saved my marriage without even knowing it, and you saved it without anyone asking. Just because it was right. I did it because I love you like a sister, I explained. For me, you are the closest image of a woman, and if I were you, I would want someone to take care of my wife, to tell her everything if trouble happened to me. I would answer her questions. When I finally called, she confessed everything to me, Rebecca continued. And then I hated her for it. But you insisted that I call and at least say that I was alive, and you made sure she picked up the phone. And then she admitted that you talked to her for a long time, talked about me, and the more she listened to you, the more she hated herself for inventing God knows what about you. With your boring calls, you convinced her to go to a psychologist and me to try to save the family. If I knew that there were men like you in the world, if I knew that you exist, I would become the most devoted woman imaginable. I hugged her tightly. I would love to wake up next to you every day, but it's just a fantasy. And we live in the real world, Rab. Make me a promise, Dee, she suddenly said. When you return home to your homeland, promise that you will come to us and meet my wife. Let her see you in person and get to know the real you, and not the image that you wear like a mask. Anything, baby, I kissed the top of her head. Whatever you ask. Listen, Rebecca continued without interruption as we drove up to the gate. I'm leaving home soon, and you won't have anyone here to harass. Do you remember what you promised me? Did he promise a promotion for brain blowing? We were just talking about this, but I wasn't so moved. She hit me again, this time in the ribs. I mean that you promised to return home and meet my wife. You swore. Yes, I confirmed. I swore. But keep in mind, I'll be here for a couple more months. I'm entitled to mandatory vacation and all that. Well, childish joy could be heard in her voice. The main thing is to notify me a week before departure so that I can prepare everything. Meeting you at the airport and a good party in your honor. Don't bother yourself like that, Rab. I waved him off. I can just take a taxi and go to your house myself. Dee, she suddenly said quite seriously, shut up. This is at least what I have to do for you. I love you, and if suddenly it seems to you that you are alone in this world, remember, you have a family, us. She leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. And yes, you were right. There is no other person like you. We picked up the supplies and returned to our headquarters without much incident. Rebecca even managed to get some sleep during the trip. I truly loved this woman. She became everything to me without putting any special effort into it, and the more time we spent together, the more I fell in love with her. Unlike the love I felt for Anne or even Barbara, my love for Rebecca seemed deeper, more innocent and pure. I knew that even if I didn't wake up next to her every morning, this woman would never betray me, leave me, or ruin my life. A few weeks later, Rebecca was scheduled to fly home to her wife. I called to say that Rebecca would be back in a few days. I even talked to both of them when they finally reunited, and my life in the sandbox went on as usual, as it had for the last few months. Before I knew it, 2.5 years had passed since I last left the States, and rest and recovery were mandatory. I called Rebecca as she instructed, and then again just before boarding. As I sat down in my seat in the C-130 Hercules and waited for takeoff, the world around me suddenly exploded with fire and thunder. I was thrown into the air, and gravity turned on almost immediately. The taste of copper appeared in my mouth, and then everything plunged into darkness. "Dee," I heard a sobbing voice. "You promised me, Dee." My eyes slowly opened. A warm and soft palm squeezed my hand, and the sound of the machines pulsed loudly in my temples. Wah. I tried to speak, but I couldn't squeeze out a sound. My throat was dry and sore. A straw was brought to my lips, and I took several long sips of what was offered to me. "Quiet," the voice said softly. "Don't drink too much, honey. It needs to be gradual." The tube was removed. "You are at Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington. Your plane was shot down as it was taking off. You stayed in an induced coma for a whole month, a serious brain injury and several broken ribs. But apparently, stubbornness does not allow you to die." I finally recognized Rebecca's voice. "It's okay, honey. I'm here." "Did he wake up?" A second voice rang out. I also recognized him immediately, although he sounded a little different than on the phone. "Oh, thank God. We were so worried." She gently took my other hand. "Tell me you remember me," Rebecca begged. "The doctor said that you will have some consequences after the injury, but how serious is unclear until you wake up." "Give him a rest," suggested Martha, Rebecca's wife. "We still have time to arrange an interrogation." "Yes, Reb," I croaked. "Let him rest. He's got a hangover now. It can't get any worse." Rebecca didn't pay attention to my painful moans and hugged me with all her usual strength. "Even looking into the eyes of death," she said through tears, "you still remain a bastard." "We're glad you're alive, Dee," Martha said and hugged me too. "We don't know what we would do without you. Rest, we'll be back tomorrow, and if you need anything, the doctors have our numbers." "Thank you, girls," was all I had time to mutter before I fell asleep again. Due to a combination of painkillers and an unbearable headache, I could only remain conscious for a few minutes every hour. At times it seemed to me that I just blinked, and the picture around me suddenly changed. If I didn't realize that this was a clear sign of serious brain damage, I might have thought it funny. After 3 weeks, I could already have normal conversations. From the doctors, I learned the extent of my injuries. Severe traumatic brain injury that left dangerous inflammation of the brain, a broken eye socket, 5 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, a dislocated jaw, 2 broken teeth, and a broken finger. To be honest, I have no idea how I managed to injure my finger as well. I learned from the nurses that both girls were constantly on duty at my bedside during the most difficult days, and when my condition began to improve, they replaced each other. Then my boss came and said that I would have as much recovery time as needed, and that I would receive half my salary for a year. If I am discharged and the doctors approve a return earlier, then perhaps I will return to duty. But I had little doubt that I would not be allowed to return to such a risky job with such injuries, and my 2 wives clearly had a strong opinion on this matter. And in fact, when Martha entered the room, she caught the boss in the middle of a conversation, and he didn't have time to really open his mouth. She immediately attacked him. "He almost died there," she began. "He's still lying there and can't even move, and you're already asking when your favorite cannon will return." "No, sorry," he turned to me. "Who is she?" "Why don't you ask me directly, asshole? I'm right here." Martha took a step forward. "Isn't it clear that he's already finished? His psyche is on edge. He can barely hold on." "I thought you said you were okay, Dee," asked the boss. "I mean, in human terms," Martha caught his gaze. "I'm not sure how capable he is of recovering from all this." She cried for the first time since I knew her. Then Rebecca entered the room. "What are you doing here?" she asked, standing next to Martha in a protective position. "Is everything really so bad there that you can't live without Dee?" "It's good to see you, Rebecca," he chuckled. "Dee, tell them what we talked about. I have a plane in a couple of hours." "What does this idiot need?" Martha attacked as she and Rebecca surrounded me. "Are you really seriously thinking about returning?" "He just wanted to know how I was doing," I lied. "I haven't decided what to do next yet." This was the first lie I told them. Previously, I only dreamed of returning to my old life, but I heard Martha's speech about how I could barely hold on as a person, and I began to think. I still had a lot of time and money left, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I just needed to live. I talked to the nurses, Rebecca interrupted, trying to change the subject and divert the conversation to a more joyful direction. They say the doctors are going to discharge you by the end of the week, but you'll have to stay in bed and go to rehabilitation for a few more weeks. Oh yes, and so you have no doubt you are coming home to us. And don't even dare to object, mister, Martha joined in. We don't discuss this. So, without further ado, I was moved to a large house with 5 bedrooms. I learned that Rebecca, working on a contract, paid for Martha's studies at medical university. Now Martha worked and supported the family while Rebecca herself received her education. This house was a gift from Martha's parents, who after several years came to terms with her lifestyle and supported her. Gradually, we formed a routine. Every morning Marta would come into my room, wake me up, feed me pills, and send me to the shower. Rebecca helped me get dressed, made me eat, and then the nurse came. When she finished the torture, Rebecca was already returning from school, and I told her how to cook those dishes that she suddenly wanted. Soon the need for a nurse almost disappeared, and I no longer needed her frequent visits. It was easier for the girls to see my naked body because they were both certified gay girls, as they liked to joke, and helped me calmly get in and out of the shower. Don't get me wrong, my body didn't care who was in front of me, but my brain understood that they had their own relationship, and I didn't want to cross the line. But at some point, I began to feel that I was interfering with their family life. I had fully recovered, and it seemed to me that it was time to move on. Girls, I began one Sunday morning. I really appreciate everything you did for me. This is far more than I will ever be able to give back, in this life or the next. I love you both as much as you can love another person, but I think it's time for me to get on with my life and figure out what to do next. Well, Martha began, there is something we wanted to talk to you about, but we were waiting until you were fully recovered. Now both of us have been given new opportunities at work, but that's not what this is about. She glanced at Rebecca. We are thinking about having a child, Rebecca continued, or rather, each of us wants to become a mother. We would like to give birth to children at the same time, Martha picked up, and we have already looked through a bunch of catalogs, choosing a donor. In short, said Martha, we want you to be the donor. I just didn't know what to answer. I think such a situation rarely falls on a man's head, and when it collapses, the brain really freezes. Listen, Rebecca said, we don't need an answer right now. Get a job first, slacker. I don't want the future father of my children to be unemployed. In the following months, everything was chaotic. I went to interviews, but to no avail. The girls didn't want to rush me, but in their eyes I read a clear hope that I would agree. And I agreed. Passed tests, genetics, endurance, psychology, and much more. I was deemed healthy enough to become a donor and was given a jar that had to be filled in 3 days. When I returned from the doctor, a stunning sight awaited me. The girls were sitting in the living room completely naked, just smiling, hugging each other tightly. I tried to quietly sneak past, but their giggling betrayed my failed secrecy. Rebecca called. Her breasts were just as perfect as I had imagined. They would fit perfectly into my palms. Their cheeks were burning. It was clear that they had been doing this for a long time. I heard you walking around in full combat gear completely silently, but you clearly didn't succeed here. And then Martha stopped kissing Rebecca and moved towards her from behind. This session is if you need motivation. She smiled slightly and leaned down to kiss Rebecca. Yes, yes, I mumbled. There's enough motivation. Thank you, girls, you just. But Rebecca grabbed my sleeve, and the two of them pulled me towards her. We need to make sure that everything is done right, Martha purred and bent down to my ear, gently biting the lobe and blowing warm breath. Do you know what they say about any good deed? If you want it done properly, do it yourself. No, we didn't have direct contact with them, but they did everything to get my DNA they needed. For the rest of the weekend, everything was repeated in a similar spirit. It was an amazing weekend. But on Monday, I returned the overflowing container to the nurse. When she saw the quantity, she gasped and chuckled sheepishly, realizing that I had noticed her reaction. "We have news," the girls exclaimed when I returned from yet another unsuccessful interview. "We are pregnant." Hell yes, I hugged them both tightly. It is clear that they have already had time to rejoice together, and right now I allowed myself to experience real delight. Then I remembered that I also had important news. I was offered a job. They let me go at the same time, and there was sadness on their faces. "Where?" Rebecca broke the silence. "Arizona." "When to go out?" Martha clarified. "In 3 months," and there was sadness in my voice. We all understood that this would happen sooner or later. I'm glad that I managed to do for you what you dreamed of. "I thought," began Rebecca. "We thought that in the current situation," Martha continued, "you would want to stay here and become part of our family." Girls, I looked at Martha. When I needed to console any of them, I called her baby. You know how much I love you. I love both, and I will love our children as much as I can. But this is your family. I will participate in the children's lives as you want, but you are an ideal couple even without me. You are too, and it suits you. There is no place for me in this house, my beloved. And that's okay. You taught me what it means to love. You have given me more than words can express. You're not going back there," Rebecca asked quietly, like a frightened girl. Her tone tore my heart. "No, baby," I answered, hugging her tightly. "This life is over for me. There isn't much left of me, and you did an amazing job picking up the pieces. I love you, baby, but now you have to let me go." I looked at the crying Martha. "You need to live your life, and I need to live mine. Take care of my family, take care of each other, and remember me with warmth in your soul." Rebecca was right. I could move almost silently, loaded with ammunition. The next morning, they discovered that I was gone, and there was a letter on the table with my contact information in case they needed any help. That night, as the two women cried and held each other in their arms, the only man these two girls had ever loved walked away from their home, their lives, and disappeared into the darkness. Arizona. To say it's hot here is the silliest understatement of the century. This is a real testament to the arrogance of humanity, to build cities in a place where it was as hot as the sun. But work is work, and this is a chance to make a living without killing and without the risk of being killed. Let them pay less than before, but their head on their shoulders remains intact. As soon as I entered this city, I only had my car and a few things with me. My life took a sharp turn, and while I could not understand whether it was for the better or for the worse, it definitely turned. I rented an apartment in some rundown complex, simply because there were no other available options. I needed to prepare for my first day in the civil service as a civilian. I literally had no idea what was in store for me. A restless night, full of memories of my girls, Martha and Rebecca, and accompanied by tension from the waist down, did not allow me to sleep well. "Hello!" A short-haired, red-haired girl turned to me when I entered the building where I was to spend a week of meaningless lectures. One presentation after another, click, click, monotonous voices replacing each other. Finally, I waited to meet my boss, and she turned out to be, how can I say, interesting. Her uniform was crumpled, her hair was out of bounds, her nails were painted brightly, and her speech was not only unofficial, it completely destroyed the illusion of any order. "Damn, it's hot today. I should have sent someone else for you, but I'm missing, damn it, a normal air conditioner. You are D." "Yes," I interrupted, "just D, Sergeant Bell." "I'm very glad to meet you." I extended my hand. Her hand turned out to be fragile and soft, and she shook it slightly. "Come on, let's get you settled. I read your resume, you have excellent experience, so get to work right away. Here at the clinic, we need to put things in order in standard operating procedures. I think you can do it." "I didn't know that was my responsibility," I remarked. "Actually, it's not usually included," she said, walking away. But your resume says that you're good at this, so that would be great. See you at the clinic, Mr. D. With these words, she left, without even saying what kind of clinic we were talking about, where I would work, and what time I needed to get there. We had just met, and I was already annoyed with her. It looks like adaptation will be difficult. In the end, I found a workplace myself, or rather, I wandered around the hospital, lost, until one compassionate employee took me to the right clinic. My boss just left for a meeting somewhere. Another clinic employee introduced me to the team, showed me my desk, and handed me a list of useful phone numbers. I sat down at the table and literally sat. When the time came for the end of the working day, I, along with everyone else, got up and left. I did this for 3 days in a row before anyone noticed that I was just sitting there and dying of boredom. "What are you doing?" asked Mr. Head, a retired colonel, an old man who had not only risen to the rank of colonel, but was already on the verge of ending his civilian career. "I'm sitting," I answered, not without irony. "I'm waiting for the boss to give me instructions." "How are you doing, Mr. Head?" "Well," he drawled, "the morning turned out to be rather boring until I saw this. Do you just sit here all day?" "About that," I grinned. "I don't have access to the network, my email isn't set up, and they didn't give me a pass because my boss has to sign for it, and if I leave the clinic, I'll definitely get lost." The colonel laughed heartily. "Well, I can say one thing. If you wait until she deigns to pull her head out of..." Never mind. You can grow old in this chair. Better let's go. I'll show you where life is in full swing here." We went to the backyard of the hospital and found a smoking room, a canopy, several tables, and about 18 people cheerfully chatting, laughing, and periodically puffing on cigarettes. When we entered, Mr. Head immediately loudly told everyone about my funny situation. In response, there was a friendly laugh, and some patted me on the back and shook their heads, expressing complete understanding. "Don't wait too long," someone muttered. "I wonder how long you'll last," the other grinned. "It's surprising that they haven't noticed yet," added a third. So, exchanging comments and laughing boisterously, we took our time. And then the fateful Friday came. My fairy tale had to end. I sat at my desk again and stared at the walls. I heard Mr. Head holding back his laughter as he passed by, and his colleagues were no longer particularly able to hide their smiles. Suddenly, the hospital commander, Colonel Morin, and the head of the personnel department entered the clinic. "Who are you?" Colonel Morin asked sternly, looking me up and down. Out of habit, I jumped up as if in front of an officer, although I was already a civilian. "Sir, I am a new employee, a medical assistant at the clinic," I reported. "Where is your pass?" the personnel officer asked. "They didn't give it to me, sir." "Wait," the personnel officer frowned. "Are you the same one who was hired on Monday?" I nodded. "Where is your leader?" "I think she's at a meeting," I replied. "And when did this meeting start?" he asked again. "It seems like Monday afternoon," I said, unable to resist a slight irony. "You have no right to be here without a pass," the commander noted. "Go home. On Monday, we will arrange for someone to meet you and process you. Welcome to the service. Sorry for the less than warm welcome. Have a nice weekend." They both turned around and walked away, clearly annoyed by the situation. Looks like Sergeant Bell was in for a tough conversation. That weekend, I realized two things: that alcohol is pretty cheap in Arizona, and that the red-haired girl from the reception was my neighbor. I saw her when I was carrying my shopping up the stairs to my apartment. She seemed to recognize me too and called out loudly, "Hey, it's you. Didn't you register at the beginning of the week?" I nodded. "You probably don't remember me," she began. "I remember," I interrupted. "I noticed you back then. I just didn't know that we were neighbors." "Yes, I live a few doors from here." She smiled and wanted to go home. "Don't you want to come in?" I asked, turning the key in my door. She was clearly taken aback. She hesitated. "I understand," I said. "You're probably busy. Maybe another time," and I was about to close the door. "Oh yes, terribly busy." Her voice sounded sarcastic. A glass of wine, a can of tuna, and a couple of old TV series, a whole adventure. I smiled. She, seeing my reaction, entered the apartment and closed the door behind her. I'm Dee, I introduced myself, placing the bags on the kitchen table. Please make yourself comfortable. Thank you, she smiled and took a couple of steps forward. I'm Christina. It's very nice to meet you, Dee. Is this short for David? No, I answered, taking out a glass of wine. This is not David, Damien. I poured her red wine and vodka with ice for myself. You know, you look a lot like David, she remarked, taking a sip from her glass and leaving a trace of lipstick on the glass. And you live here alone? Yes, I nodded, sitting down on the sofa opposite her. It's not so great, but it's convenient. And apparently, with excellent neighbors, I added, raising my glass. She blushed slightly. What did you mean when you said, no plans? No plans at all for the evening? No, she admitted. In this town, it's not so easy for one girl to go somewhere, especially alone. What are your plans? Well, I took a sip. I had a plan. Find someone to have dinner with. And he looked at her. Oh, she instantly became embarrassed. Sorry, I didn't know that you had. Then I noticed a trace of my lipstick on the glass and got scared. Oh God, I'm sorry. I don't want your girlfriend. Chris, I held back a chuckle. I was hoping you would agree to have dinner with me. She fell silent in surprise, and I wondered if I had gone too far. I need to drop by home, she finally said, seeing my bewilderment, and quickly explained, I need to feed the cat and take a shower. Can I come back in an hour? Of course, I said, suddenly laughing at the whole situation. Since when did it become so difficult to ask a woman to dinner? I'll leave the door unlocked. Just knock before you go in. An hour later, there was a quiet knock on the door, and it opened. Before Christina came into my apartment, I put my Smith Wesson .40 caliber pistol away in one of the drawers. She looked at me with a wide smile, picked up the bottle of wine she had brought with her, and walked into the kitchen. I was expecting steak or some kind of sandwich, she said with a chuckle when she saw what I was making. Southern fried chicken breasts, steamed green beans, red potatoes with rosemary and basil, and sautéed mushrooms. The baby spinach greens salad with shredded carrots, pecans, and raspberry dressing was ready. Sorry to disappoint, I replied. The corkscrew is in the sink. You know where the glasses are, Chris. Help yourself. Oh, no disappointment, she said, opening a bottle of wine. My last date was with a guy who tried to cook some fish recipe he found on the internet. We ended up eating bologna sandwiches. I purposely ignored her comment about the date. There's nothing wrong with fried bolognese, I said. In fact, this is one of my secret pleasures. She pretended to gag in response to my words. I don't know how you can like this, she said, but to each his own, apparently. What a hater, I teased. Try this. I scooped up the sautéed mushroom sauce with a spoon, blew lightly on the spoon to cool it, and offered it to Christina. It's delicious, she replied. I don't think I've ever tasted anything this good. Damn, a man who can cook. There was a micro-reaction on my face that I hoped she wouldn't notice, but I was wrong. I'll say it again, she said with a laugh. Bolognese sandwiches. We both laughed, and I broke it up by giving her instructions on setting the table and serving the salad. A few minutes later, we were already enjoying a glass of wine and, so to speak, a well-prepared dinner. After the meal, we just talked about everything. Christina laughed very cheerfully when I recounted to her the events of the past week. I learned a lot about her, too. Christina was divorced. Her husband got very drunk one day while they were out with friends. It seemed to him that she was flirting with one of his friends. That evening, he decided that she should be punished. For 3 days, he continued at the same pace, drinking, beating, and forcing him to have sex. On Monday, he sobered up enough to go to work, and she gained enough strength to call the police. By midday, she was already in the hospital, and at that moment he was being handcuffed. She didn't ask me questions about my background, just what I thought about the new job, what I liked about this apartment complex, and what I wanted to do in the future. And suddenly we noticed that it was already early morning, and Christina began to nod off. "I think it's time for you to go home, Chris," I said. "You're falling asleep." "It's a damned itis after such delicious food and wine," she laughed. "But you're right, I should go home. We definitely need to repeat this," she added, getting up from the table. "Well," I replied, "you know where I live, come over any time." I opened the door for her, and without realizing it, we reached out to each other and kissed, not a passionate first kiss, but rather the kind exchanged between a couple who have lived together for many years. After a quick kiss, we looked at each other with an awkward smile, and she left. There was some comforting intimacy in that kiss that we both needed, two broken people who found each other against all odds. The next few days went pretty much the same way, with one exception. I had a new boss. As I heard, after our conversation with the commander, Sergeant Bell was called to him, and he destroyed her with all the adjectives he could. The command sergeant major followed his example and chewed her so harshly that she would feel the echoes of this in several more generations of descendants. By the time the first sergeant got to her, word of my shiny new crust had already spread everywhere. Everyone crowded in the smoking room to look at my shiny new badge. "Well," Mr. Head said as I walked back to the clinic, "she wants to talk to you. It seems she can't really sit down after all the scoldings they gave her." He laughed loudly, and I headed towards her office. "Please come in," she said in an unusually professional tone, "and close the door behind you." I complied with the request. She closed the folder she was reading and looked at me. "I don't think you understand how bad things are if you burn bridges this early in your civil service. You have 90 days during which I can fire you without any reason." She snapped her fingers. "Just that fast, and you'll fly out if I damn well want you to." I laughed until I cried, so much so that my stomach hurt for several days. She looked at me in bewilderment. "Oh, are you serious?" I said, taking off my badge and placing it on her desk. "Well, here you go. Good luck, Miss Bell." "Wait," she began to stop me, getting up from her chair. But the look I gave her made her sit up again, and the tone of my voice made it clear that it was better for her not to climb on her high horse anymore. "Listen, you stupid bitch," I said in an icy, cold tone. "You have no idea how fucked up you are now, right? I'll explain and try to keep up, because I don't like to repeat myself." I cleared my throat for emphasis. "Let's just skip over how illegal what you just said is, and let's forget that everyone will immediately wonder why you fired me so soon after the entire chain of command kicked your ass for your own mistake. But you are missing one very important point." "Which?" she asked, and there was not a hint of the former assertiveness left in her voice. "You have no idea who I am, what I've done, where I've been, and, most importantly, what I'm capable of." I went to the door. "You can say goodbye to your career, Miss Bell. Believe me, you got into trouble with the wrong person." And this was not an empty threat. I went to my apartment, and as soon as I walked in, my cell phone rang. I knew who it was, so I just didn't answer and turned off the phone. I headed to the refrigerator, pulled out a cold beer, settled down on the couch, lit a cigarette, and laughed as I watched the clouds gather over the shit hurricane that now awaited them. Christina knocked on my door around 5 in the evening. By that time, I had already drunk most of the case of beer. "They called me today not just once, but 15 times," she said, walking into the apartment and heading to the refrigerator. She glanced at the nearly empty bottle in my hand before taking two new ones. Opening both, she handed me one. "Actually, they called me all day about a very interesting matter. Will you tell me what happened?" "It's just some fool who decided to get me," I replied. "What are we going to have for dinner today?" "Something Mexican," she said. "But Dee, what happened?" I briefly recounted what happened. She laughed almost the same way I did before. "Oh, she's such a fool. She's finished." "Yes, that's what I thought." "No, Dee, she really is doomed," Christina continued. Today, I issued her a very negative encoeur. She is being sent somewhere to a linear unit while the investigation is underway. The lawyer has been trying to contact you all day. I turned off the phone, I replied. I thought that they would still cut off my line, trying to save face. What are you going to do? Let them be nervous, I said. I think it will benefit them. Well, she laughed, how about we go to the store and buy everything you need to make another amazing dinner? But first I need to take a shower and wash this day off. I held my tongue, although she noticed it. Behave yourself, she smiled and left my apartment. Our trip to the grocery store was completely ordinary. To some, this may seem like something ordinary, but for me, it was almost heavenly pleasure. We walked around the store together, talked, joked, laughed. At the checkout, the cashier asked how long we had been married, and Christina looked confused, and I laughed and explained that we had just started dating. Christina blushed even more, and the cashier just smiled at us. Already in the parking lot, we returned to the usual jokes and drove back to my place. Dinner was chicken enchiladas with homemade sauce and sour cream. Christina really enjoyed it, and the Mexican beer perfectly complemented the spiciness of the dish. We continued to talk, getting to know each other better, but Christina still avoided questions about my past. She asked enough to understand what kind of person I am and what my principles are, but no more so as not to get into details. After this evening, I began to wonder why this was so, and decided that it was time to clear it up. Chris, I said to her, why don't you ask me about my past? It's all in your eyes, she replied in a serious tone. In them, I see everything I need to know. They are broken, they are in pieces. These are the eyes of a man who has seen too much. Every time I look at them, I see this deep sadness, and my heart sank. I can't even imagine what you saw, let alone what you did. You are a dangerous person, Dee, but not dangerous to me. What does it mean? When we were in the store today, I had never been there before. I was always afraid to go there because of the area. But with you, I felt safe, even among all those men in the store. No one dared even look in my direction. She took a sip from her glass and continued, I'm really glad you invited me to dinner. And I'm glad that you agreed, I answered, leaned over to her and kissed her for real, the way I'd wanted for a long time, to taste her breath, feel the touch of her tongue and lips. She answered me with even more fervor than I could have imagined, and I decided that this was impossible. But before things went any further, Christina broke the kiss. I have to go to work early tomorrow, she said. I have to go home. Okay, I said and kissed her again. Maybe you'll come by tomorrow after work. Yes, she smiled. I would like to. I'll bring dessert. She finished her glass and I went to accompany her. This time I walked with her all the way to the door. We again exchanged a farewell kiss and I returned to my place. Check your phone, she said. I'm sure you have a lot of voicemails. Good luck. I actually had 20 messages, all from different people, all with very important and high positions, and all with desperate requests to call back. I didn't call back. As soon as I deleted the last message, I turned off the phone again. The next morning, I thought for a moment maybe I should call back, but when I saw Christina, I immediately forgot about this thought. Hi, she said, closing the door to her apartment and getting ready for work. Hello, I replied, hugged her and pulled her close, kissing her lightly. Have a nice day at work. Now I don't want to leave. She smiled and kissed me again. Why are you so cool? Go already, otherwise you'll be late. I gave her a final kiss. See you in the evening. At noon, I made a mistake and turned on the phone. The number of new voice messages turned out to be simply incredible, but I never listened to any of them. I was really going to let them worry. I thought about contacting a lawyer to discuss my options, but I had no ill will towards them. I thought the whole situation was funny, so I turned off the phone again. That evening, Christina knocked once before walking in on me. She held a large bowl of chopped fruit in her hands. This smells amazing, she said, placing the bowl on the kitchen counter and giving me a light kiss. It was strange. We had only been together for 3 days, but it felt like we had been living together for years. It was incredibly nice. She sighed. What are we having for dinner? So I'm only good for dinner? I asked, deliberately offended. And ask how my day was? I've been hunching over the stove all day so that you can return to a warm house with hot food, but you don't care. I was cutting onions and my eyes were watering from its chemical attacks. Christina didn't miss the chance to play along. I just got home. Give me at least a minute to relax before you start hitting on me, she joked, then rummaged in the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. All day long it's one thing and then another. I would like to at least relax at home, we laughed. She kissed me again and offered me a sip of her beer, which I gladly accepted. Did you listen to the messages? Yes, I replied, tossing the chopped onions into the pan with the olive oil and chives. The onion sizzled and its aroma wafted through the kitchen. Everything is approximately in the same spirit. I stirred the onions with a wooden spoon. What do you do at work? At least 3 lawyers came and went from the office, each angrier than the last, and they were all trying to find you and contact you. Everyone made their own plans to end Sergeant Bell. I'm sure she'll either go back to civilian life or be demoted to private, depending on which lawyer will handle her case. She smiled. Are you going to come back or wait until they get even more nervous before you involve a lawyer? No, I said. I'm not going to hire a lawyer. There's no big legal mess in this. But she definitely shouldn't have worked there. She's a toxic leader. I took 2 steaks off the table and placed them on the work surface. But I don't know if I should go back. I still have time to think, and I'm not in a rush. I took the rest of Christina's beer and poured it over the steaks, then reached for the spice rack. I drank this, she remarked indignantly when I threw the empty bottle into the trash can. Look in the bucket behind you on the floor. She carefully walked over to the bucket and opened it. There, on the ice, stood a large jug. I made you mimosas so you can drink while I cook dinner. How do you know I like mimosas? She took out the jug. The glass was already covered with frost. I've never met a woman who doesn't like them, I replied. My friend Rebecca and her wife love this recipe, and it's guaranteed not to give you a hangover. Seeing how I clarified that Rebecca was gay, Christina suddenly noticeably calmed down, although I did not go into details. It's hard to explain that both Rebecca and her wife are pregnant with me. I knew that if I stayed with them, I could ruin the marriage. Perhaps the 3 of us would have succeeded, because Martha and Rebecca already talked then that it was time to take our relationship to a new level into a full-fledged triple alliance. But I understood that everything would be fine with them anyway, but there was no place for me in this picture, no matter how much we all wanted the opposite. But it's just orange juice, Christina exclaimed, taking a sip from a glass filled with the mixture. I laughed. No, I poured a whole bottle of champagne into the jug. I nodded towards the trash can where the empty bottle lay. I told you it's a secret recipe. How's it going? Damn delicious. She took another, more greedy sip. Should I pour some for you? No, thank you, I replied, spooning the spices onto the steaks. I don't really like champagne. I can drink sometimes, but mostly I try to avoid it. Your loss, she said jokingly, taking another sip from her glass. You don't want to get me drunk by any chance. I walked up and leaned over and kissed her. She wrapped her arm around my neck, gently stroking the back of my head. I don't think I need to get you drunk, right? No, she replied, but I need time. I'm not used to jumping into bed with a man just because he knows how to cook, mix drinks, and with one kiss already causes a flurry of emotions in me. Christina blushed, realizing that she had spilled the beans, but I just laughed and went back to the steaks. So, I tried to continue the conversation. So you haven't told anyone in the office yet that you live across the wall from me? No, she replied. If I tell you, they will immediately start using me to lure you into the office or force you to pick up the phone. And it's much more fun to watch them panic about a missing employee. While I think about how we had dinner together yesterday, you walked me to the door, we kissed goodbye. She blushed again, realizing that she was chatting too openly. I just laughed. "You're so sweet," I said. "Is it true?" "Thank you," she blushed again. "I really like you. I just have butterflies in my stomach, like at school. You are truly a good person, and I think I'm ready to ask you about your past." "Of course, ask." "I looked into your background when you were hired. I know that you were a military man and a contractor, but at a certain point the check did not provide more details." "I was in the Special Forces," I answered, carefully moving the onions to make room for the steaks. The beer from the steaks sizzled as it touched the oil. "Many operations are still classified because of the information collected there. It's the same with contracting. There are a lot of corporate secrets and the like." "I see," she said. "Why did you leave the army? Probably it wasn't a matter of business trips. Have you decided to earn extra money?" "I left because my wife insisted," I replied. "Do you have a wife?" She almost choked on her drink. "No," I corrected. "I mean, she was my wife then, Anna. She got pregnant while I was on a business trip. Everything became complicated. I think she just felt lonely, and I myself was not an exemplary husband when I was always on business trips. We grew very distant. I decided to quit in order to straighten things out, and in the end, I found out about her pregnancy and infidelity. But it was too late to cancel the dismissal order. And then a job turned up in a security company from one of my old friends." Christina exhaled noisily. "Where is she now?" "Anna? Don't know. We haven't communicated for several years." I took a smaller frying pan and put a piece of butter on it, and it started to melt. At the same time, I was chopping mushrooms and tomatoes. "So you are divorced?" "Yes," I nodded and added the ingredients to the heated oil. "Is this a problem?" "No, just clarifying," she shrugged. "What did you do in the army?" "My main specialty is medicine," I answered, stirring the mixture in a small frying pan. "But I spent almost all the time with sniper groups and small detachments." "So you killed people?" she burst out. "I almost got burned when I heard a question that the military usually hates." "Yes," I answered briefly, "almost as much as I saved." "Sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't want to make you remember all this." "This is not forgotten," I replied. "He lives with you for a very long time. It's impossible to get used to it, but you learn to coexist with it, with this stain on your soul." "How long does it take to learn to live with it?" "As soon as I find out, I'll let you know." I laughed briefly, making it clear that I didn't want to continue this topic. She understood instantly and changed the subject. "Where did you learn to cook? Did your mom teach you?" "No," I fell silent for a moment, trying not to plunge into unpleasant memories of my mother. "I just got tired of fast food and decided to learn how to cook what I like. If I see a dish that I want to try, I try to cook it myself, but I always add something to my taste." "Why did you decide to leave contract work?" "I was blown up," I joked. "I had to spend several months in the hospital and rehabilitation center until I recovered to relative normality." "Were you blown up? It sounds like some kind of bullshit like, bought a TV." She stood up from the table, amazed at my tone. "Well, I've been in more dangerous situations," I admitted. "What other dangerous situations?" "That is, how many things were on the brink of death." "Yes." She leaned forward as if she were watching an intense scene in a movie. I thought a little. 9 or 10, maybe even more." "Seriously?" She jumped up in amazement. "Can you tell me in more detail?" "Well, you already know about the explosion. A building also collapsed on me. The parachute didn't open properly. I was shot at, several explosive devices, the usual, so to speak, professional risks." "There's nothing ordinary about this," she whispered, opening a tray of fruit. "You really have seen a lot in life, Dee." "Something like that," I nodded, taking the baked potato out of the oven. "And here I am, hoping to find a quiet 9-to-5 job, get paid, and relax." We spent the rest of the evening exchanging stories. I learned about her life. Christina almost became a teacher, but seeing so many teachers leaving the profession, she decided to switch to a diploma in human resources management. I don't usually eat onions, she admitted, but your performance is so good, and mushrooms are generally divine. They are crunchy and tender at the same time. Steak. Oh, I thought that a man was seduced through the stomach, but it turns out it's me. Glad you like it, I laughed. I'm also pleased that you're here. Were you afraid that I would run away? Honestly speaking, yes. I'm not a timid person, she joked, clenching her fists like a boxer. I won't let myself be offended. I'm a big girl now. A big girl who's afraid of getting into bed too quickly with a man who can cook, I teased and leaned in to peck her on the lips. I'm really scared, she admitted. I've been burned more than once. I was married too, remember? This was 3 years ago. Since then, I dated several guys, but they all wanted one thing to quickly get me into bed. And as soon as it became clear that it would take time and effort, they disappeared. And then I showed up, I smiled. Yes, she looked at me. You are still here, and somehow it happens too naturally, as if we have known each other for 100 years and not 3 days. This is both frightening and attractive. You don't put pressure on me to get you into bed, but I myself constantly think about your bed, and it's scary, Dee. It's scary that you might turn out to be unreal. Well, Chris, I said, leaning in to kiss her again, we have plenty of time. I'm not going to rush anywhere, and the way we communicate now is enough for me. I kissed her. She responded with a long, tender kiss, and then went back to eating like a hungry wolf. The evening went well, like the previous ones, and when the moment came for her to leave, the reluctance to leave me was visible in her eyes. I don't want to leave, she sighed. Maybe we can sit a little longer. You have to go to work tomorrow, I smiled, walking her to the apartment door. See you, okay? Do you promise that I'll see you and have another date? She muttered, clearly tipsy from the mimosas. I promise, I opened the door. Now go, otherwise you won't get enough sleep. I kissed her and returned to my room, the tension visible in my pants. Thanks to Rebecca and Martha, I have enough memories to resolve the issue on my own if necessary. And right now, it seems, is the right opportunity. I sighed, locked the door, washed up the dinner dishes, and headed to the bedroom in search of personal relief. Good morning, I said to Christina when she went to work the next day. I wish you a productive day. I have a feeling it will be quite interesting. Good morning, she responded. You were right, not a hint of a hangover. She kissed me. What will you do today? I'll call the lawyers, I replied. Let's see what they offer me. I'm sure the news will reach you in the office faster than anything. I can't wait, she kissed me again. I have to go. Are we having dinner today? Unless you change your mind, I replied. Go to work. See you in the evening. And by the way, you look absolutely gorgeous today. Thank you, she blushed. Okay, I really have to go. See you in the evening. With these words, she kissed me again and left. I finished my cigarette, finished my cup of coffee, and returned to my apartment. I turned on the phone and waited for the barrage of notifications to die down before I picked up the phone. I made a couple of calls that needed to be answered first, mostly to lawyers, to set up meetings for that morning. These meetings turned out to be as interesting as one could expect. I was forced to sign one paper after another, mainly statements that I would not file lawsuits since they had understood the problem. At the end, they asked the main question, do you want to return to your position, or are we ready to offer you another position with the same level of pay in another clinic? I needed to think things through, and they understood that. That evening, Chris knocked on my door with burrito ingredients. We got busy cooking the meat and everything that went with a burrito, and I made some green chili sauce to put on top, plus some refried beans and Spanish rice. When we finally sat down to eat, I told her about the meetings with the lawyers and their proposal. She was interested in what decision I would make, but I myself had nothing to say yet. I had not decided yet. You know, Dee, Chris began, I want to know what you want from me, from us. Yes, that's all, I answered. I just want us to be together. I was about to continue when my phone rang. A number appeared on the screen that I had not seen for many years, so long that I almost forgot about it. "Sorry, Chris," I said. "This is my father." "Dee," my mother's voice was heard. "Your brother is in prison. You need to come home, son. Why are you calling from your father's phone? You wouldn't answer if you saw that I was calling. Come back, and quickly." "Lucky," I said, turning off the connection. "I finally found a man worth my time, and it's you, such a damn thing." "I understand," Chris said. "When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow," I answered. "Crap, don't leave angry," she asked. "How long will you be gone?" "I have no idea." I rubbed my face with my hands. "I need to find out what's going on there and what's required of me. This can take days or months." She put her hand on my cheek, turned my face towards her, and kissed me with more passion than ever before, so that it took my breath away. Suddenly, she straddled me and began to kiss me even more greedily, if that was even possible. "Since you are leaving," she said, "I want to give you something to come back for." She hissed this, standing in front of me. Slowly, with her arms crossed behind her back, she pulled off her t-shirt and unclasped her bra, letting it fall to the floor. Then she undid the button on her shorts, and they slid down, revealing no panties underneath. "Are you sure you want this?" I asked. "Oh God, yes," she whispered. "I have dreamed about this for a very long time." When it's over, without saying a word, she began to get dressed. Then she kissed me tenderly and headed towards the exit. "I hope we'll see each other again, Dee." There was sadness in her voice. "It was the best thing I've ever had." "Thank you." The next day I had to leave and again sort out my brother's problems. I was happy with Christina, but the family was calling, and I could not refuse. We never saw each other again. I was later told that she met a man and got married. He was a military man, and they traveled all over the world. I loaded my belongings into the Jeep, arranged for the rest of my belongings to be taken to a warehouse, and set off on the long road back to my hometown, facing the death and violence I had once tried to escape. The journey was long, and all the way there was silence, only endless miles of highway and my own thoughts. I tried to think through all possible scenarios as I drove back to my hometown, frantically trying to get through to anyone who could give me details about my brother's arrest. I didn't want to call my mother, even though I knew she probably had the most information. But I was not in the mood to listen to her. Deep down, I blamed her for the fact that my life in Arizona had come to an end. I met a wonderful woman, Christina, but just when I thought I had found someone to share my life with, my mother managed to ruin everything. I know this sounds unfair, but when your whole life since childhood has been built according to someone else's will, it's hard not to blame this person for how fate turned out. From childhood, my life was shaped so that I would become the owner of a sharp mind and be able to inherit the family business. I was taught to have little respect for human life. When I left that world, I did it to atone for one terrible incident and joined the army as a medic. But as often happens, I was sent to places where my criminal past turned out to be more of a plus than a minus. I tried to live by honor, wanted to start a family, and even married a girl I had been with since school. However, as often happens while I was away, she felt lonely, wanted to be taken care of, and, as in thousands of other cases, this led to divorce. My beloved wife became pregnant by someone else exactly at the moment when I decided to break with the army, where I saw only death and destruction. During the darkest period, I terribly wanted to return to my old life, to something that was at least somehow familiar to me. And when my marriage failed, I longed for the battlefield again. I found it by getting a job in a private military company, essentially becoming a mercenary. There, my abilities in battle were put to good use. I quickly advanced through the ranks, paving the way for death and chaos. With each new skirmish, I became more and more convinced that in this madness I found some kind of peace, although it was painful. But even then, despite all the terrible things I did in the name of the country or employers, I still had a certain sense of pride in my own honor. When I learned that Barbara was a married woman who was using me to cheat on her husband, I felt a completely different sense of betrayal than I had experienced with Anne. But the only thing that stopped me from contacting her husband and telling him the whole truth was that Barbara's husband was Dr. Cargill, a man who was sincerely trying to help me become a better person. Ignorance is bliss, says the old saying. I decided that there was no point in destroying his illusions and remained silent. However, I felt guilty for this act and atoned for it in my own way, again returning to the wild land with a rifle at the ready, continuing to sow death. So when Rebecca and her wife Martha invited me into their bed, I refused. I didn't want to ruin someone's marriage again, like I once did my own. When Christina appeared, it was something completely different. But here, as it happened, fate intervened again, and just when I thought it was time to hang up the bandolier in the closet, the war called me again. Overcoming the miles, I consciously tried to erase from my mind all the warm memories, all the moments that gave me comfort and peace, every happy thought. Somewhere deep down, I understood that Christina would find a man worthy of her, and I was destined to only sully her, change her, break her, and in the end we would still separate, experiencing even more bitterness towards this world. I wish things would have turned out differently, but the facts are undeniable. Finally, after an endless series of unsuccessful calls, I swallowed my pride with difficulty and dialed the very number that again pulled me out of paradise and threw me into harsh reality. On the fourth ring, the father answered, and there was uncertainty in his voice. "Son," he said, "it means your mother has contacted you after all. Will you tell me what's happening? What am I getting myself into?" I answered calmly, without unnecessary emotions. Dad was always honest and decent with me, and I could not answer him differently. "Your brother was arrested for possession of weapons," he admitted. "The family business is going through hard times, and he took up arms sales to improve his financial situation. But I never thought that he would be so stupid as to carry guns in his own car." "When did this happen?" "He was arrested several months ago," the father continued. "They sentenced me a week ago. The family name no longer inspires such fear as before, especially after you leave. I didn't want you to get involved in this again, but you know what your mother is like." "I still remember," I responded quietly. "Okay, I'll arrive late, prepare the back room." We refurbished everything there, my father said, realizing that I didn't want to accidentally stumble upon things left behind by Anne. "But I'll check again this afternoon." "Approximately when will you be there?" "I think I'll be at your house by midnight," I replied. "I'm coming from Arizona." "So you're in Arizona? Glad to hear it, son. See you when you arrive. Call my number and I will open the gate. And also, be careful, son. Everything has changed a lot here and not for the better." He hung up, and I stared at the windshield, through which streaks of rain and gusts of wind stretched. "How stupid could you be, Angel?" I muttered into the void. "You've never made such mistakes before." How much has things changed? Not for the first time, I thought about how much I had changed over the years and tried to look at myself from the outside, assessing every action I took and every relationship I made. In all these stories, I am the common denominator. Am I so broken that I can't keep a single person by my side? Suddenly, I noticed a silver Dodge Neon with tinted windows driving in the next lane, exactly the same as the one Anne once had when we met again at my parents' house. She then bought this car to drive herself to school and work, saving every penny for the day when I returned. We even spent some of the money she saved on a luxurious honeymoon in the Florida Keys, where we spent days in a small house on the beach. Her eyes shone with love every time I took her there in my arms. But when I received the first order for a business trip, I suddenly noticed how part of that love was fading away in her gaze. I didn't understand it at the time, but now, looking back, it all seemed obvious. The car turned off the highway, and I continued driving, again plunging into memories, until a signal sounded, reminding me that the tank was almost empty. Deciding to hold out for a decent gas station, I finally stopped to fill up and get something to eat. At the checkout, I put my purchases away and heard from the saleswoman. "Is that all, sweetie?" For some reason, these words resonated in me with memories of Barbara and our meetings, when she spoke to me either like a doctor, professionally bringing me to frankness, or like a woman dying of hunger for strong hands and harsh treatment. Her betrayal left me with a different kind of burn than Anne's betrayal. It burned with ice and fire. I was driving again and saw three men somewhere on the side of the road changing a tire, trying to cope with the strong wind and rain. It brought back memories of Rebecca and Martha, how they literally picked me up when I returned from another war and became family to me free of charge. Without any conditions, they healed my wounds, both physical and mental, loving me as best they knew how. With every kilometer passed, parting with Christina hurt less and less. Maybe I really was becoming that petrified person that I didn't want to be. I didn't even notice how several hours flew by and I was already at my goal. After dialing my father's number, I drove up to the gate, waiting for it to open. Having entered the yard, I headed to the outbuilding behind the house where I usually stayed. The keys were already on the dining table, along with a note from my father. He asked me to have breakfast with them in the morning. Taking the blankets left for me, I went into the bedroom. It was still difficult for me not to hear the echoes of Anne's screams on these walls. Struggling with my own memory, I somehow fell asleep. "Good morning," my mother said when I entered the house. It looked like she had served a real feast. Obviously, she wanted to talk about something. "Son," my father said, hugging me. He was never very affectionate when I was a kid, so I was a little taken aback by this. "It's good that you're back." "What is required of me?" I asked, pouring coffee into a mug and sitting down next to him. "To be honest," he said, "there's not much that can be done now. He will be transferred somewhere one of these days. We are not yet told where. And I don't understand, to be honest, why you came at all. He must find out what happened to his brother." The mother intervened. "He is part of this family. The last time I listened to you," I reminded her, "we were sitting at this very table, and you got into my life, mother. Because you are my mother, I listened to you and went against my own instincts and accepted your plan. And what did this give me?" "Sorry," she said. "I thought—" "No," I interrupted. "If you had thought about me for even a split second, you would never have put so much pressure on me to marry that bitch. I would have avoided a lot of suffering. But you thought only about yourself, as always. So why am I here?" "Your brother is your blood," she justified herself. "He needs help. And what can I do for him? Besides, why? I didn't show up for years. I didn't call myself. I didn't ask you for anything." The mother lowered her eyes. The father continued, "Just visit him. He's tormented over what he did to you. He needs your forgiveness. So, in your opinion, should I lie to him?" I asked calmly. "Say that I forgive, although I don't forgive." "Yes," the father snapped. "Everyone knows that he's unlikely to get out of there alive. Let him at least have one less burden on his soul. You have always been stronger than all my sons. I know that in the end you will do the right thing. But if you can't, no one will judge you." He looked at his mother. "Nobody." "When are office hours there?" I asked, starting to eat. "And I need your car." "Okay," agreed the father. "I'll go with you. I need to see him too." "Visits are allowed only by 2 people," the mother noted. "You will stay," the father said harshly. "This is our business. It does not concern you." The mother left the kitchen angry and offended. It was the first time I had seen my father speak to her in such a tone. "This is the first time," I noted. "What's going on with you?" "I'll tell you later, son. While you eat, tell me what happened in your life all these years. You've aged noticeably." I briefly outlined to my father the events of recent years, without going into detail, but making it clear what I had to go through. "Well, what a story you have," he said, already in the yard, lighting a cigarette. "I always knew you were too stubborn to die. Glad you're here." "Thank you, Dad," I responded. "I know you mean it from the heart, but what happened to your mother? If I say that I imagine how you suffered with Anne, then it's true. But if you say that you understand me, I won't believe you." He smiled bitterly. "What do you mean?" "When Anne left, I wondered, why did your mother defend her so zealously, persuading you both to stay together? When Anne confessed to her that she was pregnant with someone else's child, her mother didn't blink an eye." "In what sense, from another?" I tensed up. "That's when I found out that your older brother is not my son." I raised someone else's child, D. I saw his first steps, heard his first words, sat by the crib when his temperature rose, worried when he went on his first date, was proud of his successes, and supported him in his failures. And he's not even my own. Dad, was all I could squeeze out. I almost killed your mother, he continued. It took enormous self-control not to hurt her. But what is this for? After all, everything has already happened. At that moment, all my love for her died. I thought I loved her unconditionally, despite all her flaws, but I was wrong. Now I'm sick of being under the same roof with her. And what next? What can I do, son? Too old to start again. Kick her out, divide the property, so we continue to live as we live. But there is no more love. I'm going with you and will tell everything to your brother. If this comes out, I'll be laughed at. Do you know who the real father is? Yes, he answered, but I won't tell. This guy is still your brother and has my last name. I raised him. He looked at me with a look that showed pain and emptiness. It seems like no one in our family can choose a good woman. I'm starting to think so too, Dad. I put my hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry it's like that. What do you have to do with it? He sighed. It just happened that way. I nodded and went to take a shower. This may have been the longest shower of my life. It was a perfect time to cry, but I couldn't. I think there are no more tears left in me. It was much harder for my father, but he also held on, living his life with a man whom he had long ceased to love. We drove away from the house, catching a glimpse of a tear-stained mother in the window. But we both remained indifferent. She had manipulated us too many times. And just a few minutes later, we arrived at a small department where prisoners are temporarily held before they are transferred to prison. Visitors were allocated a tiny room with a glass partition. They could communicate only through the telephone. I let my father go ahead when one of the guards approached me. D, he turned to me, and our eyes met. Only a moment later did I recognize him. Officer Sandoval, I asked, holding out my hand. The years have been kind to you, sir. But they didn't spare you, son, he chuckled, shaking your hand. Once I saved him from a knife attack by a guy, my old enemy. I blame it all on the army, I grinned. Listen, he said seriously, since you've returned to our city, try not to get into anything. A lot has changed here, and not for the better. You're not the first person to tell me this. I nodded and went into the same room with the phone. My father came out, gesturing that it was my turn. I walked in and saw my brother there, who was trying not to cry. What do you want here, Damon? Looks like I'm here to sort out your problems. What have you done? For the first time in many years, I looked at him in person. Once upon a time, he was a pumped-up guy with thick black hair and a charming smile with which he opened any door. And now in front of me sat someone who looked like an outdated shadow of his former self. Confidence was gone. In its place, there were only embers of what could have happened. His hair was thinning, and a large scar crossed the right side of his face. I was set up, he said. I couldn't be so stupid as to carry an entire arsenal in my car. Talk to a lawyer. He will fill you in and help you with any questions while you are in town. I take it you'll leave again later. As soon as I finish here, I replied, although now I myself don't know what awaits me at home. If so, let me tell you right away. Remember Sissy? Yes, I nodded. And what's wrong with her? She had just left her old man before they took me, he said. She asked about you. You should check her out. The guard approached, signaling the end of the visit. It was nice to see you again, D. Find Officer Sandoval, I told him. He'll look after you. When we got outside, I introduced Officer Sandoval to my father. They shook hands, after which Sandoval looked at me and handed me a piece of paper. I remember your family from a long time ago, he said. Come to me. I think we should have a serious conversation. I'll look after your brother. Thank you, I replied. I'll stop by tomorrow. As we walked away, my father looked at me with a smile. You always had this gift. Wherever you go, people are drawn to you. What are you going to do, son? Figure it out, Dad. I've been trying to be someone else since I left here, but all I have now is a closet full of skeletons, a body covered in scars, and an empty bed at the end of the night. Maybe it's time to stop fighting nature and accept who I am. And who are you? Damon, I said. There doesn't seem to be much left of everything else. We drove to his house in silence. I felt that he was mixed with sadness and pride, but he would never tell me about it. I felt that my brother had hope, but he wouldn't tell me about it either. I saw pride flash in Sandoval's eyes. He would definitely tell me this, while at the same time warning me against returning to my old life. But besides all this, I saw one face. Cecilia. I haven't thought about this girl since I was a child. By the time I left for the army, she was already an adult woman, a pregnant woman walking to the altar. I wonder how much her life has changed. Would she recognize who I had become? So you still talk to her? Asked the woman lying next to me, clinging tightly to me, as if she was afraid that I would disappear while she slept. The day was long, but as had become a tradition, we lay together after another stormy night, and she listened to my story. Yes, honey, I answered. A long time ago, I decided never to lie to this woman. I had nothing to hide in front of her. She found me when I was at my lowest, lifted me up when I could no longer see the light, and helped me become human again. I kissed her softly. So she wasn't your lost love. It was strange to hear notes of jealousy in Angie's voice. She knew that my heart belonged only to her. All that was left of him was hers. No, I said, turning her towards me so that she looked into my eyes. I wasn't. Her smile let me know that my honesty was again the right choice. You know that I'm all yours, she whispered sleepily. You took me completely. I'm completely covered with you. You filled me. I belong to you, D. She wasn't lying. Minutes earlier, we had entered her apartment, and she immediately began to take off my clothes. After sex, I picked her up and carried her to bed, where she woke up and asked me to continue the story. I think my stories turn you on, I teased her. You always attack me when I tell you something. I attack you even if you just smile, she replied. I can't do otherwise. And then sleep took her. This was our ritual, performed countless times already. I knew that she loved me with all her heart, and she knew that I loved her, as much as my broken, mutilated soul allowed. But one thing was for sure, I was devoted to her above all else. I forgot about Cecilia again. Remembering her, I involuntarily returned to that chapter of my life when I was no longer a man, but an animal that required enormous efforts and many agreements to set foot on my native land again. But if this long path led me to Angie, I would do it again without the slightest doubt.